Yeah, and look, and I'm comfortable for it. I'm just sort of hedging and
I feel
prefacing
you.
so that when I say what I'm about to say, people see it through the lens that I see it in. But it's that the whole Trump movement, "Make America Great Again." The G in MAGA harkened back to this, and
And it
so,
allows them to increase that wealth gap, by the way, because there's fewer winners.
and then it also gives them a bigger war chest to buy more politicians with. And so, the point that I'm getting here is I I feel like I have two hats on, because one is to drive and expose and publicize and crusade about the extent and scale of the corruption sufficient to get policies passed, accomplished, coalition built, so that people are motivated to do it. But on the other side, to selectively, I don't want to say hit the brakes, but to selectively caution around the anatomy of the thing you're operating on. Because when I say the problem is bigger than corruption in Washington, it's actually this corruptive dark side of the force that I hate to use a Star Wars analogy, but just I'm committed.
do
I'm
it.
committed now.
Yeah,
So
yeah, please.
there's that scene. I don't know, it was a Return of the Jedi or something, where they're arguing about I think Yoda and Luke are arguing about which side of the force is stronger. The light side, and because the dark side of the force seems so much stronger than the light side of the force, and then it becomes clear, I think, in the fights, that the dark side of the force is stronger than the light. And it's honestly, it's not until like Luke gets super angry and looks like he's on the dark side of the force himself that he even beats Darth Vader. I bring that up to say that, like, to build the American empire, which is the stage on which this blobcraft operates in Washington, this international affairs, the American empire that stretches beyond the American homeland. It was built on this dark side of the force all the way back at the beginning. We did not become an international empire until 1898 with the Spanish-American War. That's when we took Cuba and the Philippines and became an international empire.
Through foreign policy, you're saying? Because economically, you could say maybe during the Industrial Revolution, having started post-Civil War, we got there. Is that
right,
fair?
But we were already operating in Latin America. We were doing the banana wars and the guava wars and the pine. I mean, we were United Fruit was moving into Mexico, Guatemala, Honduras, Nicaragua, Costa Rica, and installing banana republics under the barrel of the U.S. Department of War gun. This relationship between big business, it was big sugar, then big oil, now big tech. All these major industries of the U.S. always had this blob component of it. That was how we became the global power. We were not the global power in the early 1800s. It was still a battle between England and France and Spain and Portugal, and we built the America that we consider great. And this is I'm in a tough place talking about this, because I try to be nonpartisan, bipartisan. I was a political appointee of the Trump administration. I would, if there was and I'm a Republican voter, I would feel at home working for a Democrat who was aligned on this. For example, if Tulsi Gabbard had kept her Democrat Party affiliation, I don't see things in that like red team, blue team paradigm this way. It's, do I agree with your policies? And I agree with Donald Trump's policies. I don't agree with, the John McCain, Mitt Romney, side of things. I don't know that they're. But the point that I'm getting at is this structure is what built the great in what MAGA thinks of as "Make America Great Again," and the sensitivity in talking to like conservative audiences about this is you start sounding like Noam Chomsky, Howard Zinn, sort of, I'm not saying this from the socialist critique is what I'm saying. I'm not promoting socialism, communism.
People are
I
always, Mike, people are always going to twist your words, man. Like, you're out there crusading for something larger than yourself. You've obviously done a great job on it so far. Fuck them. Like, say it how it is. People know where, like, people who are not idiot commenters know where you stand on things. And for you to be able to disagree with something that was well intentioned and point out where it has flaws, you should fucking be able to do that.
Yeah, and look, and I'm comfortable for it. I'm just sort of hedging and prefacing
you.
so that when I say what I'm about to say, people see it through the lens that I see it in. But it's that, the whole Trump movement, Make America Great Again, the G in MAGA harkened back to this concept of American greatness as the world leader in, China overtook the U.S. as the biggest trading partner to Europe a couple of years ago. Even Europe, on almost every measure, China is beating the U.S. In terms of economics, influence. I remember when I got to the State Department running the cyber portfolio, and one of the multilateral organizations under my purview was the International Telecommunications Union, the ITU, which is the oldest multilateral forum in the world. It dates, it's pre-United Nations, all that stuff, and it was set up in when the international telegraph technology in the 1950s. We had to have a coordinating forum, so that telegraphs could line up, when they travel across, cables, continent to continent. But today it's sort of the big telecom intergovernmental body. And I remember getting briefed by my deputies at the time on the status and key issues. And the main concern, we inherited at the time when I was there, the head of it was Chinese, not Chinese American, Chinese representing China. All 40 countries in the African Union voted in a bloc with China. Mm-hmm. China had majority support. The U.S. was in a defensive posture, trying to play stalemate on key issues, not even so much playing to win, because that wasn't even possible because countries were aligned. This was quite a shocking thing, because you go in thinking, okay, this is international relations. America's the best. America, and you go in and you're okay. No, actually, we need a coalition build on this. We need to make these compromises on this. We're going to lose on this because China's got the leverage. China's got hand. And so what I'm getting at here is you have this international competition that's playing out, and you have this corruption we're trying to solve here. And I think when the sort of left-wing Marxist critique of the structure that I'm talking about is it's imperialism, right? It's American imperialism, and that is not the lens that I see this through. I am pro-empire. I want what's best but only to the extent that it helps the homeland. I want America's influence to be strong. I am not anti-imperialist in that sense. I'm anti-corruption, but I'm pro-homeland. The issue is there's a schism between the interests of the empire and the interests of the homeland, because you have an empire managerial class, and that's what the blob really is in Washington, whether through the State Department, the CIA, the DOD, USAID, or through folks in the lobbying world, in the multinational corporations and hedge fund private equity world, who want to influence the policies of the empire managers to maximize their profits, often at the expense of the homeland. And so I want the homeland to be great. And to do that, though, like, imagine a world where all of the corruption, if you describe this whole structure that I'm talking about as corrupt, the coups for Pepsi, coups for Pizza Hut, coups for Exxon, coups for pencil companies. We fund transgender dance festivals if we if
shit
the
was crazy.
if the State Department's field work in a country, when it does a baseline assessment of the cleavage points in a society who are opposed to a government we want to overthrow, we call them baseline assessments. We'll do a demographic assessment, which will include what do all the ethnic groups in the country think about the government that we want. If we want to overthrow a government, we need to get critical mass of its population to destabilize it, take to the streets, and install a new government that'll be more favorable for our interests.
Which also takes less than we usually would think. Like in like someone like me would think. My friend David Satter talks about all the time how the Soviet Union was overthrown with effectively 15% of their society.
Yeah,
it can happen fast.
Well, when it doesn't require a vote,
That helps.
No, but that's absolutely true. And they all know this all has spillover effects. Michael McFaul, who is the U.S. ambassador to Russia for the Obama administration, is a major, Russiagate figure. He's currently at the Stanford.
I've seen him on Twitter.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he was a big academic scholar of how to overthrow countries from the inside. He wrote like hundreds of papers on the how to. There's a very famous one, which was a 7-step guide to how to orchestrate a color revolution successfully. And one of the key components, I think it's number 4 or 5, is destabilizing street protests that are semi-terroristic, effectively. Where they're technically they call them nonviolent protests, but it's mob violence is what it is. They call it nonviolent because it doesn't involve tanks and napalm. It just involves Molotov cocktails and setting buildings on fire. That's what they call nonviolent action. But he gives examples in this famous blueprint that he wrote about how, I think it was in Georgia, or may have been 2004 Ukraine. I think it was in Georgia. He gives some Eastern European country, and he gives the example about how they created this quick reaction force to allege there was election fraud, even though it was kind of unclear who actually won. But they got enough mobs in the streets that were mob violent, nonviolent, mob violent, and that the threat. The size of these riots were so terrorizing to the population that the judges felt that they had to rule, that they had to adjudicate in favor of the mob in terms of the determination by the judicial body. For example, in Romania, it was a judicial body who canceled the elections. It's a judicial body who's banned Marine Le Pen from running in France, a judicial body who's banned Bolsonaro from
by
running
a judge. It's the mob.
Yeah. Right. And we have, and they call them EMBs, election management bodies. This is the State Department term for who you influenced in order to
that doesn't sound suspicious at all.
I can tell you about that, but our EMB here would be the Supreme Court of the United States. But so oftentimes, well, that's who decided Bush v. Gore.
Yeah,
it's
just when you say it out loud, it's like, damn.
Yeah, well. There is a recycling machine between the U.S. Supreme Court and USAID's top global influence operation for influencing the decisions of courts and prosecutors and judges around the world. It's called the World Justice Project. It's funded by USAID and the State Department. And they have a worldwide network of judges and prosecutors in 80 countries, 100 countries, thousands and thousands of top prosecutors and judges who all move through this World Justice Project network. They have a whole database, actually, at the U.S. Institute of Peace with this.
Thank you guys for checking out this clip. If you haven't already subscribed, please subscribe and hit the like button on this video. It is a huge, huge help. And if you'd like to check out this clip's full podcast episode, that link is in the description below or right here. And finally, you can follow me on Instagram and X by using the links in my description below.